Alright, it's been roughly a month, and so it's that time where I go through all the CDs I have bought throughout the month of July. I'm actually kind of proud of myself because I actually was able to sit down and listen to all of these CDs, which I have not been able to do these past couple months. But this is different, so again, I'm pretty happy with myself. I have about 30 albums in this particular haul, and I say 30 because there's one where it's technically one, but there's a second disc which could potentially count as a separate album, but I'll explain it when I get there. But besides that, if you enjoy my monthly CD hauls, please give this video a like, subscribe if you are new, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Kicking this CD haul off, we have Power Age by AC/DC, of course during the Bon Scott era, and I hear a lot of great things about this particular album. It's definitely an album that doesn't get talked about, unlike Highway to Hell or Let There Be Rock. It's definitely an album that some people say it's kind of underrated, and I hear many people say this is their favorite of the Bon Scott era, and I definitely wanted to check this album out. And overall, I'm very impressed with this one. This was a very good album. We have Rock and Roll Damnation, really great opening song. Give Me a Bullet, you have Riff Raff, Gone Shootin', Kicking in the Teeth. Like, it's a very great, very heavy album. Of course, AC/DC, again, you hear many people say they're not that great and their songs sound very samey, but again, they have that formula that is just really fun and I still really enjoy it. So yeah, overall, this is a very great album. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of the Bon Scott era. Personally, I think I still prefer Let There Be Rock. Again, that's a personal thing, but I can definitely see why some people would say this is their favorite. So there you go, really great one to kick us off. Let's keep the AC/DC train going because next up we have For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. This was the follow-up to their monster album Back in Black, and yeah, I'm gonna be honest, going from Back in Black to this, it is kind of a disappointment. But there's still some fine songs here. Of course, you have the title track. I mean, that's a classic right there. Very good rock anthem. And even when you see footage of them live, it's always a kind of a standout moment. But I also really liked I Put a Finger on You. Let's Get It Up is kind of fun. Eject the Venom. But then from that point on, it kind of gets kind of hit or miss. Like, it's definitely the songs don't hit as much. I think Breaking the Rules was okay, Night of the Long Knives, and then Spellbound's a pretty solid closing track. So yeah, I don't have much to say about it. It's just a decent AC/DC album. It's not a amazing AC/DC album. It's, you know, for what it is, it's okay, but definitely not as strong as, like I say, Back in Black, that's still one of my favorite AC/DC albums, probably my favorite in general, I would say. But it's still fine, but you can let me know in the comments below. And now we move on to the Alan Parsons Project with The Turn of a Friendly Card. Now, you've actually already seen this one because I actually showed this in my previous video when I went to Record City. And I didn't say my opinions because I hadn't listened to it yet. Well, now I have. And overall, I really enjoy this one. I think as of now, this is currently my favorite Alan Parsons Project album so far. And I have a couple already. I haven't heard everything. I have Eye in the Sky. I have their debut, Tale and Mysteries of Edgar Allan Poe. And I think that's it actually. But overall, this is a really great album. I really enjoyed Maybe a Price to Pay, and the second track, Games People Play. Like, oh my god, I love that song right away. It's got this very great catchiness to it. I mean, that's the thing about Alan Parsons Project, is that they are kind of lumped into progressive rock, even art rock, but every once in a while they'll have this great like pop moments, which I dig. And Games People Play is definitely the big kind of pop song on this. So it's a very great song. Love the vocals on it. Then you have Time, which is kind of a ballad, really. It's a really good one. I love the vibe of that one. Then you have Don't Want to Go Home. And then you have an instrumental track, The Gold Bug, which, you know, it's fine. Not too crazy. I mean, it's a good ballad. It's a good instrumental, but it's definitely not a song I'll go back to. But then you have the medley, which is of course the title track, and that's another really great moment on the album, just the medley and how everything flows together very well. Just overall, really great album, definitely a highlight of this month. And we'll see if it gets even higher when we get to the end of the year, when I go through my top 50 favorite albums that I discovered this year. So we'll see if this album gets high. And now we have Deep Purple with Perpendicular. Again, you've seen this in the previous video, but as I say again, this is actually a Japanese version, or a Japanese pressing. Again, I still don't know what if you would call this a pressing for CDs. That's mostly for vinyl, but the reason why you know it's Japanese, because on one side you have English, and on the other side it's Japanese, which is very cool. So this is the first album with Steve Morse on lead guitar, after Ritchie Blackmore had already left the band. And yeah, overall, this is a really great album. Really enjoy it. It's a longer album. It came out in 1996, so of course this is when they're really stuffing the CD. But there's some really good stuff here. Like, it's a good, kind of a pretty heavy album. I mean, you have like Ted the Mechanic on here, which is a great opening song. Even the last song, the Perpendicular Waltz, is a great closer. So you have a great opening and a great closer. And I have to read the CD because the back's kind of hard to read. Loosen My Strings, The Aviator, Rosa's Cantina, Somebody Stole My Guitar. Now the thing about the CD is that there's two hidden tracks on this one that's not mentioned in the back. You have track 13, which is called No Music, and it's exactly what it says. It's 4 seconds of silence, and when I noticed that, I'm like, why is there 4 seconds of silence here? And why is it considered a separate track? So it's kind of a dumb thing, but it makes up for it because the other bonus song, Don't Hold Your Breath, is actually really good. Just overall, it's a very great album. I'm not sure where this would rank for me, honestly. I hope to one day get all the Deep Purple albums and rank them at some points, but until then, we're slowly building. Yeah, Deep Purple releasing another album. Definitely a fun one. I actually pre-ordered this months ago when it was announced, and it's good to actually have it. And this is actually a deluxe edition because it's a 2 CD pack, and you open it up, you have these pretty cool artwork right here. So you have the album right here, and then you have a bonus DVD called let me see, it's called Access All Areas, which is basically kind of a, based on what I've gathered, it's kind of like a behind the scenes of the band. I think they talk about getting a new guitar player because this is the first album with Simon McBride on guitar after Steve Morse had to leave. So it's kind of, I haven't watched the DVD yet, but it definitely should be interesting, kind of going behind the scenes of being with a new guitar player and then playing live and stuff like that. So it should be pretty cool. Maybe at some point I need to watch it, but yeah, it's very nice. The album cover itself, it's kind of plain, it's just equals 1, which I've looked up. I've read interviews that the reason why it's called equals 1 is, because Deep Purple has gone through many lineup changes, and at the end of the day, regardless of who's in the band, it's still Deep Purple. It's still one band, hence why it's Deep Purple equals 1. It's interesting. I kind of wish they put more stuff in the album cover, but that aside, what do I think of this album? Very great, very good album, very strong. I think of these Bob Ezrin produced albums that they've done, I think it's not quite my favorite. I think I prefer Whoosh personally, but there's still a lot of good songs on here. Show Me is a nice opening, is a really good opening song. A Bit on the Side, Sharpshooter. And then you have Portable Door, which was I believe was the first single released, and that's a great song. Pictures of You, that's another really good one. That's kind of like has a nice chorus to it, which I really enjoy. Now You're Talking, No Money to Burn, Then you have the closing song, Bleeding Obvious, which is a killer closing track. Very great guitar playing by Simon McBride. Just overall, it's a very strong album. Very much enjoy this one. Still goes to show that even though a lot of the members are in their 60s, 70s I should say, they can still really come in with a great hard rock album. So definitely recommend checking this out. Next up we have The Doors, The Soft Parade, another one you saw in the previous video, and it's the final CD that I needed to own all the ones with Jim Morrison still in the band. And overall, a very strong album. I would say it's not one of my favorites personally, but it's still some really good songs regardless. Of course, you have Tell All the People, which is a very nice opening song. And then you have probably the big song on here, and it was the only song I knew before buying this, was Touch Me. That's a great song. Love the horns on that one. Seamus' Blues is pretty good. Do It's pretty decent. Wild Child's fine. And then another pretty good highlight was the last song, which is this title track, which is always kind of interesting that during this time the band would always kind of end the album with a long piece. And you know, it's not one of the longest songs. It's like a bit over 8 minutes, so it's not like the end, which is that's 11 minutes, but still, it's a very good album. I don't have much to say really because, like I said, it's not my favorite of this era of the band. Again, that's just a personal thing. But it's a very fun album, and definitely glad to finally have all the Jim Morrison albums. I know there's still the ones post Jim Morrison, which I plan to get at some point, but again, I'm not in a rush, but there you have it. And now we have Duran Duran with Rio. Again, bought this at Record City. And this is an album I've been meaning to check out for some time because I do like Duran Duran. I like some of the songs I've heard. Of course, this is their big album with Hungry Like the Wolf, which of course is their probably the most popular song. And I was curious what the whole album sounded like. And overall, very, very enjoyable. Really like the title track that kicks off the album. My Own Way. Of course, I already mentioned Hungry Like the Wolf, that goes without saying. New Religion is a really good one too. Really enjoyed that one. Save a Prayer is pretty good. It's just a fun synth pop album. You know, if you like synth pop and you like some very upbeat music, it's definitely a go-to album here. It's kind of hard to rate it because again, I enjoy this one, but I'm not sure if it's something I'll go back to very often. I gotta be in the right mood for it. And you know, again, the hits are hits for a reason. They're by far my favorite songs here, but the deep cuts are solid too. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one too if you've heard this one. So yeah, there we go. And now we have Journey Trial by Fire, the final album with Steve Perry on lead vocals before he would leave the band. And it's a very good one. I actually really enjoyed this one actually. You know, it's definitely not my favorite album with Steve Perry, but there's still quite a lot of songs that I really ended up enjoying. And again, it's a 90s album. This came out in 96 as well. So again, there's a lot of songs. So of course, not all of them are gonna hit. But songs that I really enjoyed were Message of Love, which is a nice opening song. Of course, as the big monster ballad here with When You Love a Woman, which is a great ballad. I've always liked that song. Let's see what else. Forever in Blue is pretty good. Still She Cries. And another ballad that I really enjoyed was When I Think of You. I actually heard that song a while ago, but I completely forgot about it until re-listening to this album. And yeah, that's a nice ballad too. The last song, Trial by Fire, is pretty good. Again, not all of it hits. Not all of them are that memorable. But the song that I really enjoyed is kind of what boosts this album up a little bit more. But yeah, it's a very strong album. Now we have Leonard Skinner with Nothing Special. This is their third studio album, and I wanted to get more Southern rock in the collection anyway, specifically more Leonard Skinner. And yeah, it's a very good album. I think it's, of the albums I've heard so far, it's my least favorite. And again, I have the debut, I have Second Helping, and I have Street Survivor. And yeah, this is kind of below those albums, but still, there's some pretty good stuff here still. You have Saturday Night Special, which is a great opening song. Cheating Woman, it's pretty good too. I'm a Country Boy. No, not the John Denver track. It's their own song. Let's see, On the Hunt is very good as well. Whiskey Rock and Roller, just, yeah, it's a very good album. Great guitar playing, of course, and some solid vocals, great drum and bass, and even some little keyboards on this one too. But yeah, it's a very good album, very strong album. And now we have Madonna with her debut album from 1983. I just got this out of whim. It was at Record City, and you know, I've always enjoyed some Madonna, especially her early stuff. Like, I think this album and True Blue, I said Pale Blue in the last video, but it's True Blue, that's probably going to be the last one I'm going to get from Madonna, unless, I don't know, maybe if some people can convince me to get another one besides that. But yeah, for her debut album, it's a pretty solid one. Some good songs here. You have Lucky Star, which was a single, and then you have Borderline, which is probably my favorite song on this album. I think that's a really good pop song. Burning Up's okay. I know it's... Actually, that's a lie. Borderline's not my favorite. It's probably my second favorite. But my favorite song on here is Holiday, which was the only song I pretty much knew before buying this album. And that's a fun song. That's a catchy chorus to it. Physical Attractions is pretty solid. Everybody's a solid closing track. Again, not all of this hits, but you know, it's a fun album regardless. And Madonna has always had a pretty nice voice. I've always think she's a pretty nice singer. Not one of my all-time favorite singers, but for what the music requires, she definitely does a solid job. So there you go, Madonna's debut, very good. Now here's one I know you haven't seen yet. This is another Japanese pop album. This one is called Love Trip, and it's by an artist called, hopefully I said this right, Takako Mia. Something like that. Again, I'm sorry if I butchered that, especially to any Japanese viewers. But this is a one and done album, actually. This is her only album, and there's actually kind of a mystery as well, because once this album came out, then Takako basically vanished pretty much from the public eye entirely not long after. And there are many, and I've heard many theories, but I think it was solved, I'm assuming, because from what I gathered, apparently this album didn't sell too well initially, and because of that she kind of decided not to pursue any further, and I think she got married not long after as well, so decided to kind of step away from the public and just focus primarily on family only, and then completely cut off from the media. So respect to that. But yeah, this is her only album, and again, like I said, from what I gathered, it didn't sell too well, but nowadays it's actually, especially in Japan, it's now considered a pretty highly regarded album, I think. Again, I'm assuming. Again, I don't know Japanese history when it comes to their pop albums, but still, this is an album that gets talked about sometimes when you talk about city pop in general, and I wanted to check it out, and I sampled I think a couple tracks, and I was actually kind of digging it, and so that was kind of like, well, I'm sold. But yeah, I can't really give you much of the track listing because, again, it's written in Japanese, so only a couple of songs are in English, but the rest are in Japanese. But let me just say, it's a very nice album. I pretty much enjoyed pretty much all the songs on here. I mean, there's a couple tracks that maybe aren't as catchy as some others, but the ones that really hit really work really well. There's some great bass playing, some great horns at certain points, some great keyboard playing. It's just a very good vibe album. It just has a great feel, and I really enjoy her vocals on here. Again, very calming. She has a very soothing type of voice, I would describe. But yeah, it's a very enjoyable. So again, I know most people won't give this time of day because it's a Japanese artist and most of my viewers are American. or British, so they're not gonna give this the time of day. But again, I've always enjoyed Japanese pop music. There are times I actually prefer Japanese pop over pop music produced here in America, honestly. But yeah, like I said, I'm very much enjoying this music. Now here's something pretty different. We have Bob Marley and the Wailers with Exodus. Now, I did say I've listened to all these CDs, and I have, but I'm actually not going to give you my opinion because this is actually one of the CDs that's going to be mentioned in our upcoming album exchange. This is actually Adam's choice. This is his suggestion for the group, and so I ended up buying it because I wanted to have it for that upcoming video at some point. So of course, Bob Marley, of course, one of the big reggae artists of all time, and you know, I've always had an interesting relationship with reggae. I like it, but I gotta be in the right mood for it. So again, I can't really say my opinion on this, but will this album improve my opinion of reggae? You'll find out. Again, once we do that video, I'll share it in my community tab, so make sure you go ahead and check it out when it comes out, and of course subscribe to Jason the Millennial because that's where we do the video. Excuse me, but yeah, there you go. Just wanted to show it off still. Okay, so now we have a greatest hits compilation, and this is for Steve Perry. Funny, I mentioned Journey earlier, but now we're talking about Steve Perry's solo. So, of course, Steve Perry had a pretty successful solo career, and I already knew two of his big hits. Of course, Oh Sherry and Foolish Hearts are probably his biggest hits as a solo artist, but I didn't know anything else prior. And you know, actually, a funny story is that I originally was gonna get his debut solo album. I think it was called Street Talk. But when I was on Amazon and I was looking up Steve Perry solo, and the first thing was I saw the album cover and I immediately just went for it. But I made the fatal mistake of not reading the actual name of it because it actually was this. So again, when you're on Amazon, be careful. Make sure you read the name of it before you buy. Don't just rely on the image, because I have no idea why they weren't showing this image here. But regardless, I mean, I think this is probably the better option, probably, just so you can get a taste on his other solo stuff. And in actuality, it's called Greatest Hits, but it also includes some stuff that was unreleased, because it was actually, some of these songs were from a solo album that he wanted to do originally, but it got shelved. He would release a second solo album, but didn't really have much of the songs that would make it up, if I made any sense there. It's morning, I'm recording this. But anyhow, so yeah, aside from the two songs I mentioned previously, I had no idea what the others were. And overall, some surprises. I mean, I'll be honest, there's some songs that weren't as catchy as others, but still, there's some good standout songs. She's Mine is a pretty fun track. Another song that stood out was Go Away. That's a really good one too. And then Summer of Love was pretty solid. And then probably another one of my favorites on this one was a ballad called Melody. That's a really great ballad. And of course, Steve Perry can nail ballads. He has the perfect voice for it. He's called the voice for a reason. Missing You is pretty good. What's kind of cool, it has I Stand Alone, which was actually a song from an animated film called Quest for Camelot, I believe it was called. I know my brother enjoyed that movie growing up, and I remember watching it when I was a young kid too. And it even has a bonus track. It's actually a song called Don't Fight It, which is a duet with Kenny Loggins. So overall, I'm definitely curious on checking out more Steve Perry solo. I know I do want to get his debut solo album at some point. And I do have another one of his albums. I have Traces, which is his latest solo album. And I enjoyed that too. So, you know, definitely, maybe we'll complete the Steve Perry solo catalog. Here's something you've seen in my videos many times, but here we have another 5-in-1 pack. This is the original album Classics, and this is supposed to showcase the band Poco. Now, Poco are a pretty fascinating band. Of course, they're known for country rock mainly. Of course, was started by Richie Fiore, originally from Buffalo Springfield. And yeah, 5 albums here, and I was able to listen to all of them. Luckily, they're all pretty short, so didn't take too long to get through it. But before I get to the music itself, there's one thing that's kind of weird about this particular packaging here, and it's mainly due to the albums on the bottom. So of course, normally with these, they list all the albums included, and generally they should be in order, but after looking things up, it's actually, I don't know what happened, but I think there's a printing error on these because it's actually out of order. So what the box has, it has Picking Up the Pieces, the self-titled album, Crazy Eyes, and then you have From the Inside, and then at the end you have A Good Feeling to Know. Well, if you look up their actual discography, that's actually not the correct order. It's actually supposed to go Picking Up the Pieces, the self-titled, then it goes to A Good Feeling to Know, then it goes to From the Inside, and then Crazy Eyes. So I don't know what happened there. Somebody messed up. But besides that, now let's talk about some of the albums. Now, there's actually one I'm not gonna give my opinion on because once again, this is gonna be part of the eventual album exchange, and this was actually Nick's suggestion. He suggested Poco's debut album, Picking Up the Pieces. I will say, the only thing I will say about this one, it's actually interesting because, of course, on bass and backing vocals, you have Randy Meisner, who would eventually join the Eagles. But I guess there were some disputes, and so Randy ended up leaving before the album came out, and by the time the album came out, they decided to not credit him as a full-time member. So kind of interesting, but still kind of cool though. I will talk about the other albums. We have Poco's self-titled, and it's the first album with Randy's replacement, with Timothy B. Schmidt, who would also join the Eagles after Randy left. Funny coincidence there. It's a very solid album. Definitely pretty good. Again, it's country rock. It's not like my go-to genre, but there's some nice songs here. I enjoyed it. From the Inside's pretty solid too. I quite liked it. And I realize I'm going out of order. I just said the correct order, but even I'm going out of order. Oh well, we'll roll with it. A Good Feeling to Know. I will say though, as these albums progressed, I will say they definitely get a bit weaker with each release, personally. Still, some nice songs here and there, but I don't have much to say on it. Then you have Crazy Eyes, which is the final album to have Richie Fiore in the band before he would leave. And I know Poco has had many albums after this, but this is kind of considered the end of their classic run, I guess. And probably my least favorite of the 5 personally. But again, there's probably a couple fine songs, but yeah, overall Poco, based on what I've heard, solid band, but definitely not going to be an all-time. So we'll see in the album exchange what I think of their debut album. All right, next up we have Damian Rice with O. Or Zero, I think it's O, if I got that correct. Alright, so Damian Rice, I actually talked about him a while ago. I actually got his second album, 9, before, and this is his first album. And I'm not going to say my opinion on this because this was Jason's suggestion for the album exchange. So actually, if I remember correctly, I enjoyed his second album, so we'll see how I feel on his debut album. Should be interesting to check out. I will say the packaging is kind of nice. The booklet is locked in with the packaging, which is always a nice plus. The artwork's pretty interesting too. Some interesting artwork. I'm not sure if Damian was the one who drew these, but if he did, not bad. Pretty interesting. But yeah, this is gonna be the shortest segment of this entire haul, but there you go, Damian Rice with O. Alright, now we go back to some progressive rock. We have Fountains of Light by Starcastle. Now, Starcastle are a band I'm sure most haven't heard, and if you have heard of the band, you might know they have a reputation of sounding very similar to Yes. And you know, to some people that's a turn off, like, oh my god, this band doesn't have an original sound. Fuck this band, basically. They're not original. And I say, so? I mean, I like the sound of Yes, and if a band sounds like Yes, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, I like this sound. I don't know, to me, if you're gonna hate a band because they sound too similar to another band, I don't know. To me, that's kind of limiting. If you only want the best of the best, then I don't know. You're kind of missing out on some other good music, personally. Rant aside, again, like I said, they sound very similar to Yes, but again, I like the sound, so I don't care. And the album cover is pretty cool too. Of course, this is one of those times where whoever's in charge of these reissues here, do they really got to put the sticker on the jewel case itself? Why can't they just put it on the shrink wrap? And so I've yet to remove the sticker because I can tell this is going to be one. It's going to be a pain to take out. So yeah, and it's a shame because the album cover is very cool. I'll put like a full image of it here just so you can see it. That's something you always gotta love about progressive rock, is that a lot of the times their album covers are very cool to look at. So you see a little image of the band there. Only 6 songs on here, and overall, great stuff. I mean, you have Fountains, Dawning of the Day, Silver Winds, True to the Light, Portraits, and then it closes out with Diamond Song, or Deep is Light. Again, like I said before, if you really enjoy the sound of Yes, and you want to hear an American band do their take on it, I should have mentioned they're American, then check it out. I was pretty impressed by this. I do want to get their debut album as well. I heard that's also really good too. And another fun fact is that this was actually produced by Roy Thomas Baker, the same band who produced, it's not behind me, but of course he's known for producing Queen, and even the Cars too. But yeah, very fun, very good album. Moving down the line, we have Supertramp with their debut album from 1970. Showed this in the previous video, and again, I got this out of curiosity to hear what they sounded like early on before they really started to get before they found their stride. And of course, the debut, I'll be honest, it's okay. Didn't quite hit. You know, you can definitely hear they're still trying to find their way. And of course, you still have Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson here. But apparently they didn't really write the lyrics at all. They were in charge of the music by this point, and I forgot who wrote the lyrics, but it was another guy who didn't stick around for too long. And yeah, again, there's some decent stuff here, like Shirley, like the last song I'm referring to, like that's okay. And I'm trying to remember if there was the other song I liked. The problem with this album is that, to me, again, to my ears, the songs just weren't that memorable. I mean, musically it's fine, but again, there's not really any great hooks here. And yeah, even production-wise, it's not that strong either. I think the best thing about this album is the album cover. I think the album cover is kind of nice. Again, it's weird, but definitely catches your eye. So yeah, it's one of those debuts that, yeah, didn't quite hit the mark. With that said, their second album, Indelibly Stamped, is actually to me it's actually a step up. And like I said, I said this in the last video, but of course this tape here was not on there originally. I put that on there so I can censor it, because of course it is a bare-chested woman on the cover, and you know, don't want to risk this channel getting taken down. So like I said, to me this was a step up. Still not quite that classic Supertramp sound. Of course, by the next album, Crime of the Century, that's where they really hit the mark. But there's some more songs I enjoyed here. I liked. It's hard to read, but what does it say? It's in this dark blue and it's blending with the background. Does the disc say it? Okay. Your Papa Don't Mind is pretty nice. Rosie Had Everything Planned. I enjoyed Remember. Probably my favorite song on here is the final song, Aries. I think that's a good album closer. Again, not amazing, but definitely better than the debut in my opinion. So, if you're gonna check out these early albums, I'd say check this out. Check this album first, and maybe, who knows, maybe you like the debut. And now we have Thin Lizzy with Chinatown, released in 1980, and I'm gonna come out and say it. This was another really great album. So far, I have not heard a Thin Lizzy album I did not like. Well, I haven't heard everything. I haven't heard the early stuff yet, but we'll get to those eventually. But yeah, I would say my favorite songs, but I would just name the whole album because again, each song was just very great, very catchy, great guitar playing, of course. Yeah, it's just awesome, and of course, awesome album cover too. Love the dragon on it. Not much to say, but just know this was another highlight of this haul, really. All right, we're nearly there. Next up, we have The Who with My Generation. Of course, their debut album from 1965. Of course, this is when they were more of your, not quite your typical British invasion band. Of course, this was during the mod period of England. Of course, The Who were part of that mod culture. I actually do have the US version of the debut. That was a gift from Scott from SoundLab Studios. And that was called The Who Sings My Generation. But I did want to get the UK version just so just to have. And it's very similar to the US version, but the only difference is that they replaced one of the tracks. I think the song they replaced was I'm a Man. That's on the UK. So I'll give my thoughts on the debut. Overall, it's a very solid debut. Of course, this is them very young. Of course, to me, they get way better as time progresses. But there's still some standout songs like I enjoy Out in the Streets, I Don't Mind. Of course, My Generation. Of course, that goes without saying. The Kids Are All Right. The Aux is a pretty cool instrumental, showcasing, of course, John Entwistle and Keith's drumming. And there's some bonus songs it does include I Can't Explain. Just overall, it's a fine debut, but yeah, like I said, they do better. So that's my thoughts on My Generation. Sticking with The Who, we have Face Dances. This is the first album without Keith Moon, and also the introduction of Kenny Jones from the Small Faces on drums. So, of course, the stuff with Keith Moon is going to be legendary for a reason, of course. But, what do I think of this period of the band? Overall, it's fine. Again, it's not cream of the crop Who. Let's be real here. But I will be honest, there are some good songs on this album. Of course, you have You Better You Bet, which is the big standout song. I also really like Don't Let Go of the Coat. I think that's a pretty good one. But then there's some weak stuff like Did You Steal My Money? I don't know, to me the whole Did You Steal My Money bit got really annoying really fast. So yeah, I wasn't into that one. Let's see. The Quiet One, that's a John Entwistle song, and normally I enjoy a lot of John Entwistle stuff, but I don't know. By this point, especially on this particular track, I'm like, what the heck is wrong with John's voice? And my only theory is that I think the cocaine and the drugs were really starting to take its toll, and so it was really messing his voice up. But yeah, kind of an odd moment there. I also liked Daily Records. That was pretty solid too. Yeah, it's a solid album, but it's definitely, you can tell it's not quite it's not quite meeting that expectation. And Kenny Jones drumming, it's pretty good, but you can tell that he's kind of restrained. he doesn't quite go crazy on the drums. And I've heard Kenny Jones, and he could play like Keith Moon, but I've read that Pete Townsend kind of told him not to play like Keith, and so the drum's a bit more straightforward. But yeah, still, it's fine. And we're still talking about The Who. We have the next album from Face Dances. We have It's Hard. I think of the two Kenny Jones albums, I think this might be my favorite of the two. Possibly. I have to re-listen to them both again. But I do think there's some more songs here that I liked. Of course, it starts with Anthena, which is a pretty great opening song. Cooks County is pretty good. The title track is solid. Of course, it has the big song Eminence Front, which goes without saying that's my favorite song on here. I've Known No War is solid. And Cry If You Want is okay. Again, not quite top tier Who, but there's still some decent songs here. And I think Kenny Jones, while still sounds a bit restrained, I think he has some more standout moments on the drums. But yeah. Again, not much else to say. Again, it's very similar to the last one, but yeah, it's still decent. And we have yet another Who album, and basically this month was me pretty much getting every Who album to finish out their discography. And here, this is their album from 2019, so way later. And yeah, of course by this point it's just Roger and Pete at this point, and then you have other cast of characters joining, and overall it's a very solid album, another pretty good one. Again, not top tier or anything, but there's still some good songs here. All This Music Must Fade is really good. Ball and Chain's pretty good. Don't Want to Get Wise. Beat on One Strings is pretty good too. She Rocked My World is a great closing song. And yeah, overall, again, it's very great album, especially this late in the career. Really shows that they can still come out with some good stuff, even if two of their most important members are no longer there. But yeah, very nice album. And now we have Dennis Wilson with his quote-unquote only solo album, and it's called Pacific Ocean Blue. So I put quotation marks on only because he actually was going to release a second album, and the album was going to be called Caribou, but it got shelved and it was never released until when they released this deluxe edition. Disc 2 is actually the songs that would have made up Bamboo. And hence why I say in the beginning, I have about 30, because if you can make an argument that Caribou is its own album, so it makes the total up to 30, which that's what I'm gonna do here. But when I do my end of the year CD discoveries, then I'm probably gonna lump it as one. So it's gonna get confusing. But back to the music. So yeah, I've heard some great things about this solo album. I think I've heard that of all the Beach Boys solo albums, this is the best one. And most people probably wouldn't even expect Dennis Wilson to make a solo album, but lo and behold, he did. And by this point, I've always enjoyed Dennis Wilson's stuff in the Beach Boys, especially the late 60s to early 70s. Like, that's when he really started to come into his own as a songwriter. And this album is no exception. Some really great stuff here, and of course there's a lot of players on here. I think Carl Wilson also plays on this one too. But yeah, like River Song, Moonshine, Thoughts of You, the title track, Rainbows, End of the Show, and countless others here. Like, it's a very great album. I'm very glad to give it a listen. Definitely a highlight of this haul. And I'll quickly talk about Bamboo as well, or Bamboo parentheses the Caribou Sessions. This is actually a shame the album didn't get released, because yeah, there's some songs on here that are also really good, like Under the Moonlight, It's Not Too Late, Schoolgirl, Love Remember Me, He's a Bum, it's kind of fun, Constant Companion, album tag song, All Alone. Yeah, it's a shame, but still, it's a really great one. If you are gonna get this album, I definitely recommend getting this deluxe edition because you definitely get a lot of stuff here. And I mentioned this in the last video, but the packaging itself is also really cool. Of course, this folds out. You have all this, the booklets right here, which is nice. Then you have all the discs and these patches. Just another cool packaging. But yeah, Dennis Wilson, Pacific Ocean Blue. Check it out. I recommend it. And the last CD I have for this month, we have XTC with Drums and Wires. Now, of course, XTC, definitely a band I definitely do want to get into more. I have one other album. I have English Settlement, but I've heard great things about this one too. And overall, yeah, very good. Again, they're a band I need to spend more time with because as of now, I like them a lot, but they haven't quite hit yet. But again, maybe on more re-listens, they'll eventually hit more. But this is a very good album. This is actually another kind of a deluxe edition. This is like a remaster. Comes with a new remix too, and it comes with a DVD as well. But yeah, it's kind of hard to describe them. They're kind of new wavy, bit of rock, a bit of pop. They're kind of a blend of many genres. But yeah, Making Plans for Nigel is really good. Helicopter, Real by Real. That Is the Way. Complicated Game. And there's some other songs that I also really enjoy. But yeah, again, I don't have much to say because again, they have a very unique sound, is what I'll say. I can't really think of many other bands that sound like XTC, but still, it's very, very solid stuff, very enjoyable. So again, like I said, who knows? Maybe we'll get more XTC, most likely at least. And then I do hope to, hopefully, it will click a lot more. But there you have it. That is now every CD I have bought throughout the month of July. So, like I said before, if you enjoy my monthly CD hauls, please give the video a like, subscribe if you are new. And as always, in the comments below, let me know what was the big highlights of this haul. And of course, if you want to share what you picked up this month, feel free. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. Take care and goodbye for now.